But for people who have never heard of homeopathy or craniosacral therapy, could you explain in simple words what it is?
Both of them are energy medicines. Homeopathy works to stimulate your vital energy, your vital force. We all have an innate ability to heal. I like to treat in terms of what I see as the stress in that person. All roads lead to stress. How has this person become out of balance?
And a lot of people link stress only to mental stress, when actually for the body, so many things can be stress. A bad meal can be stress, bad sleep, the way we process an event triggering cortisol can be stress, and all these things are inflammatory triggers. We go from different ways, but actually we use the same cues to try and understand how to put the body back in balance. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Eat, Burn, Sleep podcast. I'm so excited to have today with me Amal Alaoui. We share a last name, but we don't think we're cousins. We might be. Amal and I met in London. She's a homeopath, a craniosacral therapist, and I have myself used homeopathy, cranio for many years, and I went through a little health wobble. You know, health is not an end destination, it's a journey. So we have ups and downs, and even nutritionists and anti-inflammation pioneers, as people like to call me, have their ups and downs. And I was going through a little down, and I reached out to Amal because she's a member of the platform and we had chatted before, and she's helped me greatly. So I thought to myself that I was going to bring her as a guest on the podcast to bring more awareness about homeopathy and all the things that she does. In continental Europe, there is so much more knowledge about homeopathy. Weirdly, in the US and in the UK, it's not used as much. Just to give you an example, in France, most pharmacies will sell oscillococcinum to help you ward off colds and viruses during the winter, and you'll see all the little French moms pouring the homeopathic pills in their children's mouths during the winter months. In the UK, a lot of my friends don't even know what homeopathy is. So this is why we have this beautiful guest with us today here. And Amal is based in London. She practices at Try Yoga on the King's Road. This is where I saw her. She's a registered homeopath and craniosacral therapist, and she's been trained as well in mindfulness and in meditation. So Amal provides bespoke in-clinic and online treatments that include craniosacral therapy, homeopathic medicine, and breathing techniques for stress management. She is very much of an intuitive therapist. She feels people, she asks you questions. She tries to understand where and when things have gone off to release patterns of trauma and stress. Amal, that was a bit of a long-winded introduction. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Seriously, Elder, it's quite an honour to be here. For you, sadly, this is my first podcast. So somebody's the guinea pig here. But no, it's wonderful to be here. And thank you for wanting to spread the word about the wonderful things that homeopathy in particular, but also craniosacral therapy can actually address. I first became a homeopath. Well, I was curious about it when my first son developed eczema when he was tiny. And as wonderful as the doctors were, and they armed me with a prescription for lots of antibiotics and creams, which always seemed to look like, wow, this is the cure, it works. But then it would return. So for me, being a mother, and I guess I have a curious mind, I then realised, well, we can't keep repeating this for how long? And in the UK, I think we just tend to accept prescriptions because they're not terribly expensive in general, and we don't necessarily question. But I just felt I wanted something else, and I took this prescription that had these creams and antibiotics to the pharmacy, And an Indian pharmacist said, you look a little bit upset. And I said, well, here I go again. And he said, you need to go and see blah, blah, blah doctor, who is a registered doctor, but also a homeopath. So I did. And that was when I first entered the world of this thing called homeopathy. And I then took my little boy at the time, he's now 27, about to turn 27 in a few days, but I took him to see a homeopath, and I had no idea what to expect. And I just was blown away. The fact, the consultation, the questions that she was asking about this little being, this little person, and also about me with the pregnancy. And it just seemed to tick a lot of boxes. It wasn't just about, okay, this is where the eczema is. It was who he was as a person and how he was experiencing the eczema. So a lot of it was about the mind and emotions. So that was when I thought, oh no, I have to do something about this. And I was working in a very different profession at the time, corporate, and probably I think like yourself, Rilda, and loving it. But I just felt, no, this is something that I do have to do. And I spent 4 years training to get a Bachelor of Science, to study the philosophy of homeopathy, the anatomy of the body, how to do the case taking, the curiosity for me just was never ending, and also how to prescribe and learning all about the remedies, because at the end of the day, people come to see you and they want you to write a prescription that's based on a lot of the time natural substances to do with plants, trees, flowers, even metals. So many, there are more than I think 2,000 remedies, and there's plenty of research around the efficacy of homeopathy. And that was it. I just not fell in love with it, but just felt this is what I need to be doing. I then later on, with my second child, took him to see a craniosacral therapist, and again he was tiny, and I just thought that was the most beautiful thing to witness, with a practitioner putting hands onto this little body, the head, the cranium, the pelvic area when he had his little nappy on as well, and just helping to calm down his nervous system. So once again, I then said, I have to study this. So that took another 2 years. So in a way, I've studied for 6 years, and that's just the beginning. That's just the passport. So I've taken the long way around to explain that's how I came to these wonderful forms of treatment.
It's so beautiful that it came from your children, and now you heal so many people. But for people who have never heard of homeopathy or craniosacral therapy, could you explain in simple words what it is?
Both of them are energy medicines. Homeopathy works to stimulate your vital energy, your vital force through the remedies. That's the end bit, following a very lengthy consultation. And the body we all have an innate ability to heal. When we give the right prescription, then that can help stimulate what the body needs to focus on. And there are many layers to who we are. Sometimes we treat the top layer. You'll find if you took your children to a different homeopath, they would approach it from a different angle, probably like many GPs as well, or even nutritional therapists. There's a different way to skin a cat. And so I like to treat in terms of what I see as the stress in that person. And that's also probably because I then went on to train in craniosacral therapy. For me, what I've observed in clinic, and I also do online treatments as well for homeopathy mainly, for me, that's something that I look at. It's just all roads lead to stress. So how has this person become out of balance? So with homeopathy, you will be giving a prescription which can be a remedy that is diluted many, many times, and that's why it's quite safe. It's very safe. That the patient, the client, takes either in drop form on the tongue or in a little bit of water, or in pill form, or even in powder form. And over time, although everybody is different, because homeopathy is very much an individualized medicine, and I really think that's important to point out. If you came to see me and you had a headache and 5 other women had headaches, you wouldn't all get the headache remedy. You'd all get a different remedy, most likely, because I'm curious to know why your headache appears and when. Does it appear every month? Does it appear for 2 months and nothing until you have some type of stress that's going on in your body? But there is always stress for me. That what I look at. I'm looking at, is the stress, the term that is useful to use is never been well since. For some people, that's never been well since birth. They were born with a compromised immune system, compromised nervous system. Something happened, because actually even giving birth naturally can be quite traumatic. If I work on a case where there is a baby, either for craniosacral therapy or for homeopathy, the way I like to treat is combining both those remedies together. Some parents will bring their child for cranio, some will bring for homeopathy. But if I feel that they could benefit from the other treatment, then I will suggest it. But I'm looking at, where is the stress? Where is the stress? If they have an allergy, if they have eczema, if they have psoriasis, if if a baby isn't feeding correctly, if a child is struggling at school, if a teenager is dealing with social issues that they can't quite handle. These are all stresses on the body, and that's what somebody who, like myself, is a homeopath, is curious about. It's just, give me the information, I want more. And so we do a timeline in the case taking, really about in terms of where we've arrived, where that person has arrived, and as I said, never been well since. Could it be when they started puberty and never dealt with anything? Could it be because of birth, from birth? Or could it be they've had a really quite easygoing life until a life event, something happened? Now, for both homeopathy and craniosacral therapy, it could be a simple thing like they tripped, they fell. So you would probably ask yourself, well, where is the emotional stress in that? But that will impact the body, and also how I'm interested in finding out, how does that person actually respond to what happened to them? Do they bury it, get on with their lives? Perhaps if there's a bereavement, do they go into denial? Or do they cry a lot? That will help me identify the type of prescription. There's a lovely remedy. I don't want to say what it is, just in case people start to go out to buy it, to think, yes, that's me. But where there are a lot of tears, they cry, they love their independence, but they do need to be hugged. They need to have people around them. And it's almost like the signature of the plant that we will be using, that is diluted many times. And I have to ask, is it easier for you to take liquid or pills? So as you can see, at least each consultation, the first consultation is minimum of an hour, and then I may have questions after that as well.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's in essence how homeopathy has been going for about 400 years, 350, 400 years. And I think the biggest users are in India. The French do love it. You see a homeopathic doctor.
Yeah.
And I believe Switzerland as well. It started with Samuel Hahnemann, who was a German doctor, and he was quite stubborn. He was not liked by the medical profession 400 years ago. He was a difficult man because he kept wanting to challenge the way people were being healed. So
very interesting. And there are many things that you've said which are fascinating. The first thing is the start the starting point, which is linked to stress. And a lot of people link stress only to mental stress, when actually for the body, so many things can be stress. A bad meal can be stress. Bad sleep can be stress. The way we process an event triggering cortisol can be stress. And all these things are inflammatory triggers, but they can come from so many different ways. There is this fantastic book called The Body Keeps the Score, about how so many mental illnesses have been triggered by a single event, where you are not necessarily born with a chemical imbalance, but rather something happened which then triggers cortisol, which triggers inflammation, going on to trigger gene expression and a bipolar gene or schizophrenic gene or depression or anxiety or and so on. And I look at people exactly the way you do. It's like all the roads lead to Rome. And oftentimes when I look at other practitioners, we go from different ways, but actually we use the same cues to try and understand how to put the body back in balance. And you, like I do, we use each other's knowledge. I used your knowledge, you used mine, and I love spreading this information for all of us who are trying to reach optimal health. I see it as little crutches. We should use all the crutches that we have. And sometimes it means allopathic medicine. Sometimes there is an extreme case and you have an infection and you need the antibiotics. You don't want to have sepsis. You're going to have the antibiotics. But sometimes you don't necessarily need them. And the eczema cream might not do the long-term job, and you've got to fix the roots of the problem. Before coming here, I did a little search on studies showing the efficacy of homeopathic remedies. And it was quite interesting because there are many of them, and I'm going to pull them out quickly now. There was one I thought that was very interesting. So I've looked at studies only since 2020 because, of course, they go back for such a long time. And there's a study showing that it does help with ADD and with hyperactivity. There was another study showing that post-operation, homeopathic remedies were as effective as anti-inflammatory medicine, which is brilliant. And then what was even more interesting, there were a lot of studies trying to show the bias involved in the studies on homeopathic remedies. So these are, more conventional doctors trying to show that there is a lot of bias involved. But the truth is, there is bias in every single study. And this is something I'm keen to raise awareness over, people don't realize that every single study has bias. Who is financing the study? What are we trying to show? Who is conducting the study? Who is analyzing the results? And who is bringing you that study? So I'm the person bringing you that study, and I have bias. And when I work on the Eat, Burn, Sleep platform, I know I have bias because I'm a subject, so I'm subjective, not an object. But I try as much as possible to remove that bias and to look at studies showing the opposite of the points I'm trying to prove. But coming back to those studies, trying to show that there is bias in the clinical trials on homeopathy, I thought to myself, there is no point in doing this because we know that the placebo effect accounts between 30 and 50%. So traditionally, we used to say that the placebo effect accounts for 30% of the efficacy of anything. And then they conducted a study and they gave a group nothing and another group a placebo, but they told the group with a placebo that it was a placebo. And it still worked. So the results were the placebo effect accounts for 50%. I call that neuroplasticity. So if homeopathy triggers neuroplasticity, then it works. That's all that matters. If the pill you're being given or whatever treatment you're being given triggers that neuroplasticity and you're getting the results, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the result. And I'm super results driven. So.
And I also find, I think it's brilliant what you've just picked up on, but when I get clients saying, but how does it work? How does it work? And I have to giggle because every time I've been to my GP, and I have an amazing GP, I have to tell you as well, because I believe we live in privilege really in our society where we have access to conventional medicine, traditional medicine. We can choose. For most people, we can. It's all about being informed. And the way I like to treat, I like to work, is I always say, because I take on a case and I say, this is how long I feel it's going to take, particularly like something to do with eczema. If we have a stubborn eczema that's been there for a long time, you don't want the skin to be distressed while we're waiting for the remedies to work. So I will probably, and this will surprise clients when they come, so just use what you're using from the GP to start with, because we can't have your skin or your child's skin in distress, just to see, and then till the homeopathy starts to do its job, which a lot of people will think that's quite unusual. I'm not a purist. I think, and this is what I found I loved about your Eat, Burn, Sleep protocol. If it was said, you have to give up these foods forever, there's no way I would have followed it. But the fact that you do that 80-20, I have to say for me it's more 70-30, but it gives you permission to at least have one foot in the part of the world that you kind of know or that you enjoy with food. But the same is that we have access. Sometimes you do need surgery. I'm afraid a pill doesn't necessarily sort it out, whether it's pharmaceutical drug or whether it's a homeopathic pill. Sometimes you do need surgery. And you mentioned that a lot of conventional medicine, they do also include some remedies. Like I know cosmetic surgeons and many surgeons who do recommend pre and post-op homeopathic remedies. Again, I'm not going to say which ones in case everybody goes out to buy them. I don't want to be responsible for that. But so the fact that we can choose, I'll have a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that. And I always say to clients, save the antibiotics if you can, but if we need them now, you take them.
I'm absolutely with you on this. This is a question that I get asked so often, either in my private practice or on the forum, on the platform, or sometimes in the street. It's happened that I got stopped by people who said, oh my God, Yalda, I'm so glad I'm bumping into you. I have this autoimmune disease. The doctor really wants me to go on immunosuppressant, but I don't want to. What shall I do? And my answer is always, first, I'm not qualified to give you advice on medical treatment. I do me, and I do my bit, and your doctor does their bit. Yesterday, I was on a call with a private client who might have pancreatic cancer. It is not sure. It's still at a stage where she can be saved, but the surgery is a major one, where they remove part of the pancreas, part of the duodenum, part of the stomach, and the recovery is very difficult. And she reached out to me because she's desperate to try and heal this in a holistic way. But I know what the stats are for pancreatic cancer. So I said to her, listen, I'm not qualified to give you advice, but here is what I would tell a family member. We don't want to do a Steve Jobs. First and foremost, we need you to be safe and alive and have the best life expectancy. So is the surgery difficult? Yes. Is it daunting? Yes. Is your doctor insisting you have it now because your doctor believes this is the best course of action? Then yes. So I advise listening to your doctor. And then I'll help you recover from the surgery, prevent further cancer processes, help you through all of that. But first and foremost, we want to be safe. And I agree with you. A holistic approach, an alternative approach, is not on the other spectrum than a traditional approach. We should be working together for patients to reach a state of optimal health in a very safe manner.
I absolutely agree with that. And integrated medicine, where we can bring a bit of, you have to look at diet. You have to look at one of the things, again, I'm focused on is manage your stress. You see people coming in, and I just say we've got to address the stress. We have to address the stress. So whatever's going on, they also have to see their GP. They have to see their specialists. We have this armour, and how privileged again are we that we have access to this. We choose what we hear. For some people, they want the body work. For some people, they want to have a prescription. But with homeopathy, what I found rather beautiful about it is a talking therapy as well. There's a lot during the consultation that has to be explored in terms of what type of food do you like to eat. I'm not interested in the food that they believe they should eat, because I want to know, do they prefer salty things, sweet things? The consultation also requires them to talk about the biggest event of their lives and how they handled that. Was it a loss, a bereavement? Was it surgery? If they're going to have surgery and they're worried about it, homeopathy can support that emotionally before and after the surgery. So the integrated approach, I think it's tricky trying to be a purist about things, and you kind of leave something out of the room, I feel, if you have that kind of mindset. With the stress, it's such a big topic, and people who address it in different ways, but I'm always looking at the nervous system, the impact on the nervous system because of that person's stress. Could be that the stress is because they are allergic to certain food. But they're intolerant to certain food, so they've been able to get away with it for many years. But I'm curious to know, why do they love to keep eating tons of bags of chips or whatever, or ice cream, again, icy food or salty food? That's the bit that the homeopath also wants to know about. That's their story. I love listening to people's stories in a very safe environment. You're holding space for them. The nervous system is really important, and I'm seeing, particularly these days, and I think also in younger people, far too many people walking around with overwired nervous systems, and that will have an impact on hormonal health, the endocrine system.
Absolutely. So, and many people don't even realize the impact of food on their stress levels. They think, I'm just going to meditate to try and de-stress. But actually, the food you're eating impacts your blood sugar regulation. And if your blood sugar is dysregulated, that increases cortisol, which then in turn increases blood sugar dysregulation. And you're caught in this vicious cycle of mood, of higher stress, of cravings, and of restlessness. Whilst if you fix the food, suddenly the mind can calm down as well. And that's something I hear a lot. They say on the platform, some people go there for bloating issues, and then they say to me, oh my God, my ADD has reduced because of brain-gut connection. It's so huge. And
there's a lot that's being documented about that particular, yes. So watch this space.
It's time for a little break. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying today's podcast. A reminder to all our listeners to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your friends and anyone who might enjoy listening to it. We also have a discount code for all our podcast listeners, which I will be sharing at the end. Keep listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. So just to give a little bit of background to our listeners, I've personally used homeopathy over the years, but the time where I felt that it was the most helpful was in 2019 when I was run over by a bike and broke my ankle, needed surgery. A titanium plate was put on my foot with 7 screws, and I had to be in bed for 8 weeks with my leg elevated. That was pretty hard. And someone said to me, why don't you call Ainsworth Pharmacy in London and try and speak to a homeopath to get a prescription? So that's what I did, and I felt a difference. So I used homeopathy. I also used herbal essences. A friend of mine who's a herbalist did that for me. I used my surgery protocol, which is on the platform. I mean, I created it during that time, tried to eat a lot of foods to repair the tissues, but I could really feel the effect of homeopathic remedies. And recently I have a friend of mine who unfortunately was involved in an accident, and I went and got her prescription as well. She's a lady in her 70s taking her little pills every day now. But when it comes to craniosacral therapy, I used it for the first time in my life when I was pregnant with my second child. So like many mothers, first birth, no one warns you. You go there like a lamb to be slaughtered, and you have no idea what's awaiting. And I had it was a good birth, but it was a difficult first birth, forceps and all. 21 hours. So for the second child, I thought to myself, right, I've got to prepare better. So I did pregnancy yoga. I read all these books about natural birth, and I started working with a craniosacral therapist, and she would come home and put her hands on me and do all these treatments and aligning me. And she was there during the birth. She was also my doula. And I managed to give birth to my youngest son, who was 4.8 kilos. So that's 10.5 pounds. Naturally, in 9 hours, which was so much less than my first baby, who was 3.8 kilos, and that lasted 21 hours. But the second one is always easier. But that's when I discovered this. And then she treated my children as well. And I was introduced to this fantastic field, which I had never heard about. I discovered her because I was looking for a doula in the first place. And then I discovered what she was doing. So could you please explain to our listeners what it is?
What craniosacral? Yes, I'd love to. I find it so much easier to write about craniosacral therapy. On my website, I have lots of articles because it is something when people can walk out of a room and they just say, wow. The beauty is that you see that they've reconnected with themselves. And that's what I'm watching and observing. The anatomy side of it is you're dealing with the nervous system, you're dealing with the fascia, the cerebrospinal fluid, which is this fluid which runs from the brain down the cervical spine where the neck is, through the rest of the spine, and to the sacrum. So the cranium, the head, and sacrum, which is the pelvic area. And that fluid floats all the way through there. What have I left out? Cranial nerves and also facial nerves. We hold a lot of tension in our faces. So all of that can be released through having craniosacral treatment, helping to put, at the end of the day, because I try to take the complexity out of both homeopathy and craniosacral therapy, even though for me, I think till my dying day, I'll still be researching and studying this. But you are working on that craniosacral system to help facilitate a frazzled, usually most people that I will see will have a kind of, I describe it as slightly sparky electric nervous system. You want to put it into what's called the parasympathetic, and there's a lot out there now at the moment. Because there are so many stressed people, but put it into the parasympathetic state. So that's that nourishing, calming, rejuvenating side of our nervous system. So I always explain when people say, well, what happened? How did that happen? And particularly if they come for a long, deep treatment, depends whether they've come for homeopathy and then I made towards the end tap in and access their craniosacral system, just to see almost where they're at. And so once you've done a treatment, that just helps settle. You can sense the spine starting to settle down into the treatment couch. The breath starts to slow down, and I do quite a bit of work on breathing techniques and getting people to, for both homeopathy, but particularly if I do a lot of online homeopathic sessions, just hear your breathing, hear it. We don't. Every day I think it's good for people to just think, okay, what's my breathing telling me? Is it telling me to kind of like take a chill pill? Just come on, take a back seat, because the nervous system is becoming wired. And we don't want that, because that will, through the work that you've done as well, will affect everything. We want to have as much as possible. We do need to be in that fight or flight side of the nervous system. We do. I needed it to run here because I thought I was running late. I couldn't have done it being calm and slow. But we need that, but we need to know when to switch off. So with cranial, you lie fully clothed. I've had 1 or 2 men turn up thinking they're going to have a massage. And I've said, you'll want your money back, because I do not do massage and you won't be happy. So you're fully clothed and you're on your back, and then that's when the treatment starts to happen. Some people, although I don't tend to see many people like that, just want to surrender and don't really want the feedback. But most people I see, no, Amal, give me the feedback. What are you picking up? What are you sensing? And then they start, some people, if we have injury in the shoulder, something like that, sometimes an arm can go up through the treatment. This is through anatomy. What I'm doing is tuning in. That was the bit during my training in the beginning where I thought, I'm never going to do this, because I was very much the way I was living, doing the doing. You learn that less is more, and that's quite tricky.
Breathing is so important. So important, because it changes our cortisol levels when we do the shallow breathing here. Because when we stress, we start doing shallow breathing, but that increases the stress. And if we do just a couple of minutes of breathing in the tummy, the stress disappears. And also, many people don't realize that cancer cells need 2 things to live. The first, they need glucose molecules. And glucose is not just in sugar, it's in many foods. And the second thing is they need CO2, which is carbon dioxide. So if we don't exhale properly, we're feeding potential cancer cells. So breathing is so important. But we hold our breath just replying to an email sometimes, or just doing something. And as you say, we need to be in that go get things done state of higher cortisol in the morning. That's what allows us to get things done. We need it. People who have very low cortisol have issues. So we need that cortisol, but we need to regulate it so it doesn't get to a point where it becomes harmful for the nervous system, where it becomes inflammatory, where it becomes pro-cancer and all of that. And wonderful that you can, just with your hands, unlock all these things in the human body.
Yes, and then sometimes I'm sensing how quickly the cerebrospinal fluid is running up and down the body, and can we calm it down? Does it calm down? And then you might just sense that somebody will just start to flop, and secretly I'm thinking, hooray! It's always a privilege to work on a baby, and parents, I always warn them in the beginning that when the baby is lying down and requires the mother to also hold on, because I need to be in my zone, and I have to wait for the baby to make eye contact with me and to give me permission before, because even though their parent brought them to see me, I have to allow them to say, yes, I'm ready. And that may sound a little bit woo-woo, but it's super important.
Not at all.
Respect.
Yes. Babies understand so much. And do you help babies who are colicky or don't sleep?
Yes, or again, never been well since birth. If they had a traumatic birth, whether they came through the birth canal and forceps, well, forceps aren't necessarily, but the ventouses, or did they have cesarean? I've noticed in my experience in my clinic, working with babies that have been born via cesarean, they tend, when they're toddlers, to tiptoe a lot, and then we kind of need to ground them because they haven't quite it's so cute. So cute to work with them.
So interesting. So because they're not grounded, they tiptoe more.
Yes.
I've noticed some children walk like that.
Yes. I mean, not everyone, because remember, we're looking at the individual, but it's just to help them feel settled. Sometimes they can scream through the entire session, or they just fall asleep. And then it's good to hear the feedback 24 hours later from parents to say, what did you do? They slept all night long. Or it could, and so it's accessing that nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And we can prescribe remedies. So it could be colic, lots of things with...
Amazing.
Yes.
And the mix of both therapies, do you find that it helps you unlock further results for your patients?
Yes, because even with adults, I say to them, it's just not about coming to see somebody like myself. And obviously, you don't have to come and see me, but somebody like myself for a prescription or for a body treatment. It's about developing greater self-awareness, and that's what I think is key. I think if 60% of the outcome is because they've got to know themselves, the triggers, do they have boundaries, do they lack boundaries? The more in touch we are with our bodies, then that's part of the healing journey. They need something to take away with them. If I do Zoom calls for homeopathy, which can be anywhere in the world really, they may say, okay, but can you give me some little hacks, I suppose. That's the word that seems to be used a lot these days. But things that you can have. I just say, imagine there is your toolbox. You have a toolbox. Let's see what we can put in it. There may be a few remedies. There may be one remedy, but use the breath. Every day, just check in on your breathing. Ask yourself. And also, what is the one joyful thing you want to do in a day? When we're quite high-powered, and I think we all want to achieve, we're all about achieving these days, we forget, but hang on, let me just check in. What is my breath telling me? The power of the breath.
It's so interesting that you're talking about doing one joyful thing a day. I'm going to share a little story I've never shared before. So when I had autoimmune hemolytic anemia, which is a rare autoimmune blood disease, and my hemoglobin dropped to 47 when the normal range is between 120 and 140. And below 80 or 8, you need a transfusion. At 4, you're in a coma. 40, you're in a coma. 30, you're gone. I was 47. Medication didn't work, steroids. My body was still hemolyzing despite 100 milligrams of cortisone a day. It was a very desperate time. And a friend of mine recommended this healer. And I said to her, really? How much does she charge? Thinking, okay, another charlatan. Because during my health journey, I saw many people who took my money and didn't help. I want to put this out there. Because that's what happens when you are in a desperate place. You end up wanting to believe that something is going to help you. And I was like, okay, what's this person? I was like, how much is this going to cost me? And she told me the price. I was like, fine, I'm ready to lose that money. I'll give her a call. This woman was a very wise lady. And she said to me, you have a disease of the blood. That's when people lose the will to live. And it came to me as a shock. My children were 2 and 4. Of course I wanted to live. And I said to her, not true, I want to live. She said, okay, what are the things that bring you joy every day? And the things that bring me joy are very simple things. Like having a coffee. I love coffee. but with my inflammatory bowel disease, because I was flaring all the time, I couldn't have coffee. And there were all these different things. And because of my circumstances, these simple things were not happening in my life. And I thought, oh my God, I need to bring joy back. So I started, every day I would wake up and I was like, my job today is to do one thing that brings me joy. And sometimes I did things that normally would bring me joy, but I would do them mindlessly. So I forgot the joy element. For example, cooking brings me joy, but I was just like in mum mode getting things done. Or walking brings me joy, but my hemoglobin was so low I couldn't walk anymore. So I took myself on very slow walks. I love exercise, but I couldn't exercise anymore. So I started going to these slow yoga classes at Equinox in London. And it was so slow, but I could do it. And I could feel my nervous system calming down because I was bringing mindfulness and joy in little things every day.
That's beautiful. And that's so great to share as well.
And I love the fact that you're saying this. And I do this with private clients. When they are in a place that's pretty difficult, I'm like, okay, I want you to bring joy in one thing. You pick. It might be your morning routine, putting your moisturizer on. It might be your shower. It might be getting dressed for bed. It might be just, walking your dog in the park. Whatever it is, one joyful moment a day keeps you alive.
Yes, and I think also all of us, no matter what our circumstances are regarding lifestyle, budget, whatever, we just need something to look forward to. So if it is that you want to break out of the eat, burn, sleep, and eat a croissant, you're allowed to do it. You can, but obviously not 7 days a week. Or just ring a friend or a relative, or just that there has to be a tiny bit of joy every day. Okay, all about the balance, just bringing the balance. And the other thing that I think is important, and this can take time, this is about what people put into their little toolbox, the invisible toolbox. But look up. I on my Instagram, I did a post on the weekend, probably for myself, because I was thinking, oh gosh, I haven't looked up around me. And I remember I did the post during lockdown and reposted it, because we need to look up and just see, oh yes, what's going on out there, despite everything nasty that's going on and that's in dire straits. And the other thing also is, I've completely forgotten what the other thing, checking on our intention about when we're about to do something.
So on these good words, I want to end the podcast on something I think that can be interesting for people. Why don't we share what you and I have in our own toolboxes to keep happy and healthy?
Yes.
Do you want to start?
Oh.
Or shall I start?
You start.
Okay, so in my toolbox, I definitely have early mornings. They give me joy. I'm an early bird. It's my circadian rhythm. So going to bed not too late and waking up early and enjoying the morning is my first source of joy. The second thing is I have daily walking. That's huge for my mental and physical well-being. Walking is the most underrated exercise. It is anti-inflammatory. It is fat burning. It prevents against Alzheimer's if you talk at the same time or listen to a podcast. It taps into creativity. So early mornings, walking. People. And this is, for me, very important. I need social interactions to feel good. So it's a very simple thing, but if I go to the supermarket and I can check out at the automated checkout myself, or I can go to a human that's going to be slower and I have to queue and they help me put the groceries in a bag, I go to the human. Because all these human contacts bring oxytocin up and reduce cortisol. The next thing is, of course, the eat, burn, sleep lifestyle. But with that is definitely the 20% naughty. And the naughty or treats is good for you. Because if we stop anything 100%, if we stop any food group 100% for many years, we lose the gut bacteria to digest it because we stopped feeding that bacteria and it just disappears. So treats are not treats. They bring variety and they protect us. And the last thing, very important for me, is I need to do movement almost on a daily basis. So I'm now 46. When I built the platform and I was 40, 41, I was happy with 3 anti-inflammatory movement sessions a week. I now need 5 to 7 to feel good. And I think it's important to tune into our bodies and just recognize what feels good. And at the moment, this is what makes me feel good. So that's my toolbox.
Oh, I'm not sure if I can make my toolbox that big just now.
No, but I also have homeopathy.
Yes,
I also have lymphatic drainage,
yes.
acupuncture. I forgot about all these things.
Yes.
And all these things, all the alternative and supportive things, and infrared sauna, which I love, I don't do them all the time. It's like supplements. People ask me, oh, so do you take this one? No. Life is ebb and flow. If you pressure yourself to do something all the time, it becomes boring, and then I would go off forever. I would never want to do something again if I overdose it. But I just pick and choose and when needed. And sometimes it's just, an evening with friends drinking and eating oysters that just resets the clocks.
Well, I probably wouldn't eat the oysters. I don't like oysters. Lobster every day would be good. Yes, everyday movement in terms of walking, which can happen at different times of the day, just depending on my schedule, walking with my dog. And just when, if you do have too much that's going on, I think just having that connection, community as well is really important as well. So go find your community, whether it's at work, if you're blessed to work with really good people who can support you, you need to have community, and that's really important. Or ring up a friend. Obviously homeopathy, I'm forever taking different types of remedies. If I have a stiff shoulder or something, I know what to take. My breathing, yes, I love doing 5-minute mindset meditations. Not that I've done for myself, but I may get them from somewhere like Aura, which is very good. I have no connection with them. And a little bit of dark chocolate. Not too dark, but I don't know what you would recommend as the lowest you can go before it becomes inflammatory. But, oh gosh, yes, giving up chocolate. And tiny bit of cheese, good cheese. But, and just those things, I think. But always saying, what is there to look forward to? Is it having a coffee with a friend? A good coffee? So, yes.
Amal, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for this.
It's been such a pleasure, and I hope more people look into all these different therapies that can support their health physically, mentally, their children, and particularly for conditions like eczema. So many children suffer from it. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. I hope you're enjoying it. A reminder to all our listeners to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your friends, with anyone who might benefit from it. And also, we have a discount code to all our podcast listeners for all the Eat, Burn, Sleep membership. It's podcast15 that you can enter at checkout on eatburnsleep.com.